So a couple of weeks ago I was gathering some footage from Amnesia, The Dark Descent for my best Lovecraftian game video, and while I was doing that I noticed that Frictional had added a new feature to the game, that being hard mode. And I know I'm a bit behind the times on this because hard mode was apparently released in early October, and I hadn't made any videos by that point. In fact, as far as you know, I didn't exist back then, so it would have been pretty hard for me to make a video about it. But nonetheless, here I am, and one playthrough of hard mode later, and I can tell you this. With that name, they're not messing around. Before I explain why, let me tell you just a little bit about the game in case you don't know. Survival horror game, creepy castle, monsters roaming around, scary, you solve puzzles, very scary, red goo, scary. There you go. That's Amnesia: The Dark Descent. But the horror in Amnesia: The Dark Descent base game didn't come from the threat of being killed. It came from the threat of being found. What you didn't want in the game was to be chased by the things, because the way they build up the suspense, the music they use, all of that makes it a very frightening experience. But if you did get caught and you did get killed, it wasn't a big deal. You just came back. And that was fine. Another big feature of the game, aside from the monsters, is the idea of sanity. If you look at monsters too long, if you see creepy things, if you stay in the dark for too long, you begin to lose sanity. That can be remedied by, lighting torches or having your lantern out. But lighting torches and having your lantern out, that uses resources, tinder boxes, and oil. Now there's plenty of oil in the regular game, so it's never really a big deal, but just keep that in mind for now. Even if your sanity was to go to 0, all that happens is you collapse, and then you get back up and you're okay. Keep that in mind as well. So really, in the base game, the only way you can fail is if you give up. If you just stop playing, that's the only way you can really end it without finishing the game. A hard mode, however, hard mode does away with this. So without any further ado, here are the full list of changes from regular game into hard game. When you get killed, you do not respawn. You just go back to your last save point. Saving now costs 4 tinder boxes to do. If you reach 0 sanity, you die. Monsters are stronger and faster. They also see you easier. There's no monster music, so you don't know when they're around. And there are less resources. Now, upon reading these changes, my initial reaction was, oh, the monster changes, those are the big ones, and the others, who cares? I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. I was impossibly wrong. Good God. I'm gonna split the game into 4 parts, each of the main hub areas, and tell you which ones were difficult and why, on a scale of 1 to 10. So starting with the beginning of the game and the entrance hall. This gets like a 2 out of 10 for me. The only remotely difficult part is the water monster chase at the end, and even then, it's nothing to write home about. This was fine. This was basically the same as the regular game. I believe there is one monster that can spawn here other than the water monster, and if you just look away from him for a few seconds, he disappears. So none of the new mechanics really stuck out to me. I did notice my sanity going kind of low at some points, but again, that happens in a normal game. I never collapsed or died in this case, so yeah, it was fine. So once you've done the entrance hall hub area and you've done the water monster chase, you move on to the back hall. Now the back hall gets like a 6 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. This is where it kind of picks up, because of 2 areas in particular. The first one is the storage. Now, this is a very dark place with a lot of monsters. I think it's got 4 potential monster spawns in it. Overall, it's not too bad, but the big thing that started to worry me here was sanity, because it was very dark, and I didn't have much in the way of, lantern oil or tinder boxes, so I had to stick to what light they gave me, which ended up being like 2 candles. I just had to hug these candles until, the character Daniel thought this is okay, I can move on. I've looked at this tiny flame for long enough. Yeah, I may have horrific PTSD and am being stalked by eldritch creatures, but you know what? I do enjoy a tiny flame. Another thing that happened in the storage was some of those monster mechanics finally showed up. I caught one glimpse of a monster, and as soon as I did, he started coming after me. But yeah, aside from that, a lot of staring at candles and just walking very slowly through dark corridors, so a little bit harder than the previous areas, but not too bad. And then one very swift elevator ride later, and you're into the prison. Now the prison is where it picks up once again, because here there are a total of 11 monster spawns that can happen. If you go around it well, you can probably get away with around 4, maybe 5, but 11 monster spawn potential is pretty crazy. But once again, I found that the monsters weren't really the issue. The issue here was sanity. Sanity was starting to become a real problem. I had to keep finding lights and just staring at them so that Daniel wouldn't freak out and have an aneurysm. Like, usually, in the base game, he just has a seizure, that's, you know, whatever. But in hard mode, he just dies, straight up. So you have to stare at these candles to, I don't know, to fix your agoraphobia or whatever it is. And this is where I noticed that hard mode wasn't just making the game more difficult, which it certainly was. It had completely changed the focus of the game. Because usually, all you have to do is, you know, hide from monsters, if your sanity falls, whatever. But in this, not being spotted is kind of secondary to just not dying passively. This means you have to play the game fast. Now, the base game, you could really play it at whatever pace you wanted, but in hard mode, you have to be quick. Because if you're not, your sanity will just naturally drain and you will die. By solving puzzles or unlocking new areas, making progress, your sanity gets improved by quite a bit. It gets restored. But that alone isn't enough to, you know, hold off the death by sanity. Because the game is constantly throwing things at you that will naturally decrease your sanity. Like, darkness does it by itself, but occasionally, you know, you'll open a cupboard and it will be full of scary bones. Or you'll just hear a creepy noise and Daniel will freak out. Or you see an enemy and your sanity gets destroyed by that. There are so many things acting against you that if you don't act fast, you're just naturally dead. I can't think of any other games that have actively changed the focus simply by changing the difficulty. Like, if you guys know any of those, I'd love to know, because I can't think of any. And this is certainly the first I've played that I can remember. And that's great, I love that kind of thing. But anyway, back to the game. When you're finished with the prison, which is hell, you come to the cistern area. And the cistern area is fine. There's like one scripted monster spawn. There's another bit with water, but it's not got a water monster. Unless you're really low in sanity, which, if you are at this point, you're dead anyway. And then you get to the sewer. The sewer's a little bit harder. The sewer has a handful of monsters in it as well, most of which, it's just a matter of they spawn, you hide for a couple of minutes and they disappear. But still, if you get caught, you get killed. Right at the end of the sewers, however, is is a terrible bit, and terrible in the best way, where it's the only monster in the game which does not despawn. To my knowledge anyway, it's the only one which does not go away if you just wait. And he's standing right where you need to be. So what you need to do is crouch in this water, because if you run, you'll make splashing noises, he'll hear you. Pick up a rock, make sure that rock does not hit anything else while you're carrying it, or else you'll be notified. You have to throw it, run around a big thing, and hope that he doesn't see you while you sneak past him while he's, you know, investigating the rock. And then as soon as you're past him anyway, he will automatically turn around and start sprinting after you, and you have to go through a handful of doors and then climb a ladder pretty slowly while he's right behind you. That bit's pretty crazy, but it doesn't really change in hard mode. It's more or less the same. That enemy will always one-shot you. He will always end up chasing you. I think he always runs at the same speed, so none of the mechanics really apply to him. This is just a difficult part of the base game, which, I guess the only part of hard mode which really makes it any harder is the saving mechanic. Because if you mess this up, you're going back to your last save, which could have been, you know, 2 hub areas ago. I think in total I saved 4 times in this game, which means if I died, I was going back like a quarter of the game, which would have been less than ideal. But anyway, I didn't get killed by him, and I finished the cistern area, and I'm gonna give that like a 4 out of 10 in difficulty. The sewer is really the only hard bit. And then we're into the final hub area, the nave. There's a lot to say about the nave. This will get a 9 out of 10 in terms of difficulty because of one area. One very specific area, but let's talk about the others first. So, the easiest area in this place is a place called the transept. There's no monsters. Your sanity can get low if you touch all these torture devices that are around, so, you know, don't touch the torture devices, you'll be fine. You pick up some things, and then you leave. Great, that's that area done. The next is the choir. Now, the choir is, in the base game, the worst area in the game. And in this one, it's pretty close to being the worst as well. Just look at it. This is like Silent Hill. It's got 6 enemy spawns, all of which will one-shot you if they find you. And these guys are much faster than the older monsters in the games. These ones will get to you in seconds, so you have to hide. Luckily, it's really foggy, but at the same time, because of the fog, you can't see more than 10 feet in front of you. And there could be a monster, you know, 11 feet, so careful for that. Keep in mind, there's no music to warn you when the monster's around like there is in the base game, so that's even worse. This place also has the torture devices that the transept had, so, you know, if you touch those or look at them for too long, you'll either get jump scared or your sanity will be completely destroyed. And there's also giant pits which you can fall down and just die. So, overall, not the nicest area, Whenever I think about Amnesia the Dark Descent, hard mode or not, this is the area I think of. I think Frictional knew just how bad the choir would be, because when you leave it, you get serenaded by all these candles. Any PTSD you may have gathered in this room is now gone, for you have all the candles you would ever need. Praise be the candles. But this is not the specific area I was talking about, which is difficult, because on my first attempt I managed to get through here without dying. In fact, I went through the whole game without dying until one area, which I'll get to. But once you're done with the choir, and once you've left this hellscape of a place, you go to a place called the Chancel, which is one of the nicest looking areas in the game. But you don't get to experience it for long because there's a scripted death here where 3 big lads come and take you to their big lad prison. And Big Lad Prison is fairly uneventful. Fun fact though, if you just wait in the cell they put you in and don't try to escape, if you stand there for like 5 minutes, you get a secret 4th ending to the game, where you just die. So, there you go, if you want to do that, you can do that. But if you do escape, you have to use a bucket to find a key and use a key to unlock a door, and then you're being chased by the big red goo. And the big red goo wants to get to you, but he doesn't because he's kind of slow. So you run away from him and you're back into the nave. And again, Big Lad Prison, I think it's called cells in the game. The cells aren't that different in hard mode. In fact, I think they're exactly the same. As is the nave and the choir, more or less. In fact, this entire area is pretty much exactly the same as it is in the regular game. The choir's a bit harder because enemies find it easier to spot you, but sanity's not really an issue in any of them if you don't go, meddling with torture devices or stay in the dark too long. And the Chancel, that area where you get captured, you end up going back there, and that's more or less the same as well. So what is this area that is so bad? That area is the Inner Sanctum. So I'm gonna repeat my steps. On my first attempt to the Inner Sanctum, from leaving the cells, you go through the nave, you find a new place that's open up, you make some Capri Sun for this weird German guy, you feed him the Capri Sun, you cut off his head, you take his head, or you just leave it. You could just leave it if you want. No, I take his head. And then you go into the Chancel again, those boys aren't waiting for you, there's an enemy, if you just wait, he leaves. You go, you pick up some tar, you break a thing, you go towards the Inner Sanctum entrance, you pour the tar into the thing, you put the shards into the thing, you make a thing, the thing goes blue, the blue thing goes and touches the other thing, the screen shakes, you regain a bit of sanity, this red goo starts chasing you again, you have to beeline it to the Inner Sanctum, you go into the Inner Sanctum, you cut yourself twice, you faint and you die. What? Why did I die? This place is fully lit, my sanity was okay going in. Why did I die? I made it the whole game without dying until now. Why am I dead? Oh well, I made another save back when I was in the cells. So, I go get the bucket, I get the key, I open the door, I run away from the red goo beast, arrive in the nave. This time I don't make the Capri Sun, I don't cut the German guy's head off, he can just stay here. Go into the Chancel, let the thing despawn, pick up the tar, put it in the thing, put the things in the thing, let the blue thing do its thing. Inner Sanctum's unlocked, run to it, open it, die. I died even faster that time. Maybe I need the German guy's head. Okay, let's do it again. Pick up the bucket, get the key, open the door, run away from the Laffy Taffy catastrophe, arrive in the nave, make some Capri Sun, give it to the guy, cut off his head, run into the Chancel, you let the guy despawn, you go pick up the tar, break the thing, put the tar in the thing, put the things in the thing, let the thing do its thing, go into the Inner Sanctum, cut yourself, die. Again. I just died again. Why did I die? And then I realized, this is the last level of the game, right? Now in the base game, the Inner Sanctum was really easy. You go in, you cut yourself in a thing, you stand in a place, you cut yourself in a thing, you stand in a place, and then you're done with it. It was kind of anticlimactic in the base game, because, the people, the antagonist, the protagonist were constantly talking about the Inner Sanctum. You thought it was going to be this big, scary thing, this big climax, when in reality it's the area after it that's the climax. So this one is more or less just a transitional zone. And that was fine in the base game, I didn't really mind too much, but it was a bit of an anticlimax. They didn't want to do that in hard mode. In hard mode, they thought, no. You have to do this perfectly, or you're dead. So, okay, let's do it one more time. You get the bucket, you get the key, you get the door, Laffy Taffy catastrophe, nave, juice, German guy, head off, find an extra tinderbox which lets you save again so you don't have to do that stuff again. Wonderful. Chancel, despawn, tar, break, put the things in the goo, let the thing happen. Now this is where the important move is made. So, earlier I mentioned that when you solve a puzzle, you regain sanity, and when you see bad things, your sanity gets drained. There is a trigger in this room. When you stand on the trigger, your sanity will go down. When you solve the puzzle, after a few seconds, your sanity goes up. But also once you've solved the puzzle, the area blocking off the sanity decrease trigger is opened up. So what you have to do is create the orb, solve that puzzle, let the blue thing do its thing. As soon as you've finished with that, start sprinting towards the door. Your sanity will go down, and then the puzzle will count as solved, and you'll get your sanity back. If you don't do things in that exact order, you go in with less than full sanity into the inner sanctum and you will die. Now that sounds complicated, I'm making it more complicated than it actually is, but that's the level of thought they put into this. And I absolutely adore that. That's a wonderful use of game mechanics that I don't think most developers would have the balls to do, because frankly, that's kind of ridiculous. In fact, just before I reached this point, I was starting to think that hard mode wasn't that hard. Sure, there were a few moments where you have to drastically change what you're doing, but it was more of a focus shift than a difficulty tweak. Once you reach the inner sanctum, yeah, this has earned the title of hard mode. And especially holding off until the last level, that is sadistic. And in fact, when you do beat the game, you get an achievement called masochistic, so yeah, it was sadistic, and they wanted it to be. Anyway, after the inner sanctum, you reach the orb chamber, which is the end of the game. I won't show it, but yeah, nothing really changes in there. It's fairly simple. And yeah, that's the end of Amnesia hard mode, and I've got to say, that was so much fun. And I went back and did a full playthrough, just, going quickly through normal mode, just to see what differences jumped out. And at the end of normal mode, I had over 100 tinderboxes remaining. At the end of hard mode, I had 0. So that shows you what the real difficulty was. I thought it would be with the monsters, and their speed, damage, and sight improving, but no. The most difficult aspects of the game in hard mode were the sanity, the saving, which costs 4 tinderboxes, and the lack of resources throughout the levels. According to the wiki page, there's between 20 and 30 tinderboxes in hard mode compared to the 150 that are in regular mode, but I only found 16. Mostly because I was kind of afraid to explore anywhere in case I died. But yeah, that shows you just how different it is. Can I recommend this to people? Yes, if you're into these kinds of things. I would still say Amnesia, one of the best horror games ever made without hard mode, but hard mode just adds that little bit of extra, teeth to it. I just wish they'd go back and do this with the Penumbra games as well, but I think they've had problems with the publisher, so I don't know if that's going to be happening. I assume they'll do something similar with Soma. I know with Soma they did the, what's it called, safe mode, where enemies don't spawn, which is kind of the opposite of this, but yeah, I like Frictional. They're a great company. This game came out 8 years ago and they're still adding stuff to it. You gotta love them for that. And this is the second big update they've done for free. A few months after the game came out initially, they made a free DLC which they gave to everybody called Amnesia Justine, which itself is quite different from the base game. But yeah, enough about that. I'll cover that in another video sometime. But yeah, for now, that's Amnesia hard mode. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to join me next time where I'll be doing something else. Oh, one more fun fact about the choir. It's called that because, not because it hosts a choir of singers or anything like that, but because between the torture rooms in there, they've got these metal pipes that will carry the screams of the people being tortured into the cells of those yet to be tortured. It's kind of messed up.